currently underway, and he'll have more to say on that, I'm sure. And finally from me, I want to just encourage and to explain to people that my office and the office of His Worship, the Mayor, Graham Smith, will continue to be in touch and to communicate about the status of the fire and then look towards recovery as we move into the future. That's it from me, and I'll hand over to Mayor Graham Smith.
Kia ora everyone, and it's been a trying time for Mackenzie. We've been through the COVID, we've had Auckland in lockdown, we're very high in tourism here, and likewise this has affected a lot of businesses. We didn't need the fire, that's just another something on top, but however, like the Minister, I'm very proud of the way our district, firefighters, helicopter pilots and everything came to the party, and quickly, along with the aid of the weather, which is couldn't have asked for better, got this fire under control. We do have a lot of anxiety out there amongst our people in this community, and I think probably across general New Zealand as far as COVID's concerned, but Twizel was threatened by a fire some 3 years ago. It has frightened the people, and so we are very anxious around wilding pines and vegetation in this area, and I know the government has given us quite a bit of funding, but it hasn't come quick enough to actually manage some of the branches and you know the growth of trees and fuel that can ignite at a moment's notice. So I just ask that we can, and I know our men will get power lines up, we'll get people back in as soon as possible, but be patient and work with our fire service, who have been absolutely tremendous.
Thank you, Graham. And on behalf of Fire and Emergency New Zealand, I'd like to thank the Mayor, the Mackenzie District Council and his staff, and also the Department of Conservation and their staff. Our response to this is a multi-agency response. The incident management team is made up of all of those departments mentioned, as is the firefighters on the ground, etc. And also extend my thanks to the Minister showing his support down here and coming down to visit the site. Thank you.
Kia ora. Any questions?
Minister, you had an opportunity to meet with some of the affected property owners this morning. How are they and what did they tell you?
Yeah, first I'd like to acknowledge what they're going through. A number of them have lost and have property that's damaged. There is, in our discussions, anxiety and really they're unsure about what the future holds for them. But I know that the good communication from the Mayor's office and also the work that Rob and his team are doing are helping them, one, to get back to their property in the first instance, and two, how we might support them into the future. But it was a good meeting. There was lots of good positive feedback, not just about the role that the fire service and the emergency responders played, but also some of the challenges that they faced. They were quite clear with me on what those are.
I guess this might be a question for the Conservation Minister, but we've been speaking to locals on the ground who told us that fire yesterday was potentially 20 years in the making because of the wilding pine spread. Is that a message you're going to be taking back to Wellington about the problem that the people face down here with those wilding pines?
Yeah, most definitely. In my early conversations with the Mayor, he indicated the issue with the wilding pines and what the challenge is. He acknowledged that there is some support there, but it's clear that this fire is another one of those reasons why we need to move as soon as we can on making sure there's an effective plan so that these types of fires don't happen into the future. And I'm sure with the commitment of the Mayor and his team, and I'm happy to take this message back to my colleagues in Wellington, including the Prime Minister, to explain just the need around some urgency for this.
Has there been any discussions with families about what support they would like to have?
Look, in the discussions we had this morning, a number of them raised some issues with us, but to make it clear, right now our focus is on the fire, the response that the team, Rob and the team are doing. I have no doubt that in the coming days, through the Mayor's office and his team, the conversation and the needs and the assessment of those families that are affected will be coming through to my office, and we'll continue to communicate on that.
Do they have an idea, or can you give a time frame for when you will be able to provide some support? Because as the Mayor was saying, Graham Smith, there is a lot of people in the community that are hurting.
Yes. Look, I have no doubt there are already mechanisms of support. We know that COVID's been around for a little while now, and we've done, I think, a pretty good job at supporting a number of businesses there. What I will say is, though, in light of this fire, we will continue to work with the Mayor's office to provide the support where we can. As the assessments are being done, for example, we met one property owner today who had no property affected other than the surroundings, where we've met another property owner who's had significant property damage and loss. So those assessments, I'm sure, will be underway, no doubt, in the coming days.
Can you describe some of the damage that you've witnessed?
It was a little bit... Today it was blanketed in snow, so in terms of the scorched earth, we didn't get to see much of that. However, there were hot spots that were readily identifiable from the road. We did manage to visit one property where a house was lost, a property was lost, and it was heartbreaking, and we spoke to the owner who was thankful that nobody was hurt, but of course is sad that they've lost that property and are looking to see what's next for their future.
And as this is still being treated as an active fire, what are the next steps for fire and emergency in trying to make sure that this does not get out of hand?
So we're taking the opportunity right now to develop a plan over the next week, and we are working with heavy machinery out there now to put in control lines so that's right up against the black, ensure that it won't go anywhere. We've got the weather forecast out through for the next week. We know when the weather changes, and we've taken that into consideration, and we will be monitoring this going forward. We'll take some active firefighting again probably Thursday, Friday, and then we'll monitor the fire into the future and ensure that the hot spots are out and the properties are safe.
Rob, how many of your planning for fires or vegetation fires have included a snow plan before?
Oh, well, we're versatile. We work with what we've got, and the elements of weather usually help us one way or another. So we'll normally either run out of fuel or the weather will help us in one time, at some time. You know, we're a maritime climate, and we're living with the weather all the time, so we work with that.
We were sitting here yesterday, just 24 hours ago, talking about a screaming nor'west. Could you believe it? We woke up this morning with that suddenly changed, delivering what it ended up.
Well, ironically, I did believe it because it's exactly what was forecasted, and the forecast was pretty well bang on. We had nor'west wind, and then it was forecasted to go southerly, and it was forecasted to snow. I don't know our level of confidence in that, but reality tells the story.
And how many people are still on the ground at the moment?
There's currently about 15 out there in the field working with the heavy machinery and managing those situations, doing site assessments for each of the residential properties so that we can develop a hazard plan for each of those properties to allow them back into those.
And Mayor, are you able to give a bit more of an indication as to what, I guess, the atmosphere has been like in the community and what sort of support the council will be providing over these coming days?
Well, the support within the community, and in fact all Mackenzie is very, very strongly community orientated, and the support's been absolutely marvellous, from accommodation, from food, everyone trying to help one another. I think, to me, it's very satisfying that the Minister can take time out of Auckland and come back down here and see it firsthand himself, and we will work closely with the Minister office. There's a lot of things coming into it. One thing that has really struck out, and the Minister and I both commented on the fact from the photos, those properties that made a real intention to keep the vegetation well away from their frontages actually helped themselves. And so around Twizel here, we have areas where there's trees. We need to be more proactive and actually making sure that vegetation is not in a position where it can explode and cause property damage.
Do you have an expectation for when you'd like to see some support coming through from the government?
We were very lucky to get a large amount of money to remove wilding trees. As you spoke there before, it's almost come a wee bit late as far as this fire is concerned, but never too late. It's a huge job. We were crying for help 5 years ago, but this government has recognised it, and we are spending something like 70 million here in Mackenzie over the next 4 years to eradicate it through various means. But again, we just have to be so vigilant around fire and these dry tinder conditions.
Where in particular are the wilding pines the most hazardous?
Probably just about in the area that went on fire, but at the same time the property that did have a lot on, Pikaki Downs, had actually done a huge amount of clearing, and without them doing that, this fire would have been even worse.
Has there been any discussions with the families affected about whether they are insured for the property damage, and particularly for the family that lost the homestead?
I know the family that lost a homestead, it is insured, but we've not had those discussions, no. That's their business.
Can I
I
just...
know you're keen to have some one-on-one time, so maybe we'll take a couple more questions from the floor, and then we'll perhaps split up so that you can have that time before the 1 o'clock deadline.
If there aren't any more questions, there's one thing I will say, and I'm sure the Mayor will agree. The response has been fantastic, but the message to the rest of Aotearoa is Mackenzie District is still open for business. We appreciate that tourism is a big part of what goes on here in the Mackenzie District, and it is a beautiful place. It's my first time to the Mackenzie District, and it's absolutely stunning. So I'd encourage New Zealanders far and wide who are looking for a holiday destination to make the Mackenzie District their holiday destination. While acknowledging the work that Rob and the team are doing, I'm sure as the Mackenzie District looks to recover, they'll welcome tourists back quick smart.
We most certainly will. Thank you, Minister.
Rob,
Cool.
can I just ask you to explain where you're at with crews, so the helicopters and your ground crew, what's the situation there at the moment?
So all the firefighters, if you like, the ground crews have returned to station back at home. The heavy machinery plant workers are out there doing it now, and they will be there for the day and probably the next 2 or 3 days. All of the aircraft are going to be stood down shortly, and we'll call in the locals as and when we need, and we have a plan to use some of the technology from the sky and do thermal imaging work to identify where those hotspots are in the future, which will help set our plan going forward from Thursday-ish around there.
And can you just sum up briefly the situation, the fires at the moment? We're not seeing flames, but...
The fire's sitting there under a cover of snow. It's not going to go running anywhere. There'll be smouldering heaps with heavy fuel loads in different areas, and that's something the public shouldn't be concerned about. It's not going to go running towards any property. We've done site assessments on all those properties, and we wouldn't be letting the public back into them without confidence that they are safe.
Can you perhaps describe how long a fire like this can remain active, particularly as you said, it's covered in a blanket of snow. How long could it still continue to smoulder away?
When you get into deep-seated burning or fuel that has been buried in soil, it could come up 3 months later. Now what we will do is we will make an assessment of what the perimeter is, what the risk of a fire breaching that perimeter, and then work in from there. So we'll work with a 10-metre perimeter for a start off, and then we'll gradually move to 20, 30, and we may even leave some internal burning carrying on. Our only concern is concern from the general public, and every time they see smoke they'll call 111, which is the right thing to do. But be assured this site is currently managed.